אשר עצמי לכל הצדיקים האמיתים שלנו וכל הצדיקים האמיתים שוכן עפר הקדושים אשר בארץ אין מה. בואו יבחר לרבנו הקדוש צדיק יסודרם לך נגע מכוח תורה רבנו אנחנו תרגי מצimcha. נא אנחנו יום זכותו תגן אלינו וכל ישראל אמן. So Bezrat Hashem, thank God we're already progressing with the story. I have the intention with God's help to finish it tonight. Bezrat Hashem. We're going to finish the story. But we're not done with the explanation of it, clearly, because it's very deep. So hopefully we can summarize what we started, finish off, read through what Rabbi Nachman wrote at the end of the story, and then go into a few ideas that I thought were very nice to bring the application of what he's speaking about in the story. It's funny, I was reading a beautiful letter by Rabbi Natan, the second letter of his book, the letters of healing, Alim Litrufa. Over there, he writes a beautiful idea about the fact that he got a perush, a commentary on Sipur Masyot, especially the story of the lost princess. And when he got it in his hand, he looked at it and he was amazed at the beauty behind the commentary that he had seen from one of the students of Rabbi Nachman, who wrote a beautiful perush on it. But at the end, he said, even this, after reading this commentary, I recognize that this person doesn't really understand the story at all. Because he says, even though it's emet, and this is what Rabbi Nachman really, he was meaning this, what was written in the commentary, meaning that what the commentary was writing was good, it was true, meaning that was Rabbi Nachman's intention as well. Nonetheless, you can't really put Rabbi Nachman's intention and to say that is his intention, because clearly when he wrote the story, he was referencing lots of things, so infinite to the point where Rabbi Nachman himself said that people shouldn't write commentaries on it. Now Rabbi Natan understood that to mean that yes, you write commentaries, but to the idea of understanding that it's so infinite that you can't really put a grasp on this story. I'm going to give us a commentary I'm going to bring a piece from Chayei Moharan, which is Rabbi Nachman's biography, about the greatness of his books. And from this we'll get an understanding about how much we don't understand. Which is, I think, the key to the story, as we're going to see, especially with the last story, which I don't know in which order we're going to go with the 13 tales, but wherever God guides us, you'll see in the last story about this idea of the 7 beggars, and how each beggar represents in Avodat Hashem and Hasaga perception of God that is beyond our capability and our intelligence, way beyond. And part of the rectification is that we believe we have emunah, we have faith, that we have no idea at which the level this beggar attained. That is actually the way to bring in the redemption, which was a beautiful idea, I thought, because the second you begin to think you understand what he's saying is the second you take away from the book. So even though we're trying to describe what Rabbi Nachman is telling us, and Rabbi Natan said the main idea is the simplicity behind the books and the advice that he's hinting to us, nonetheless the intention is so great that it encompasses an infinite amount of things that we can't even really touch. And I'm going to share a piece in Chayei Moharan a little bit later. Or you know what? Might as well do it now, before we even get started. Something very beautiful that I was reading. Something amazing. We know Rabbi Nachman revealed many books, and he also didn't reveal many books. Towards the end of his life, Rabbi Nachman, one of his last commands, was he told one of his students, Rabbi Shimon, his attendant, to burn all the books that were left in his chest. And when Rabbi Natan heard this, he started crying, because he understood that there were secrets in that chest that were meant to be revealed that could not now be revealed because Rabbi Nachman said it was not fitting, that the generation wasn't worthy. The books were so deep, we're going to see and understand how deep they were, that why Rabbi Nachman intentionally didn't reveal them. Rabbi Nachman also alludes to different secrets. He brings from the Zohar, the Holy Zohar, where Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai writes that sometimes burning a book is effective in sending a message to God through smoke. That through the smoke of the book which is burning, that the tzaddik who's burning his book is able to send a message to Hashem through the smoke. And there's lots of other deep secrets with regard to this, aside from the fact that he's not revealing it for a very, very intentional reason, and that is because it's too much light, and the generation is not worthy. We're going to see something here about a book Rabbi Nachman wrote. He wrote 2 very lofty books called Sefer HaNischaf, the burnt book, and Sefer HaGanuz, the hidden book. And clearly Sefer HaNischaf, the burnt book, was a book that he had eventually ended up burning, higher than all the books that we have revealed of Rabbi Nachman, like Likutei Moran, etc., etc. This book was so deep that he ended up losing his wife and his children due to this book, because he revealed the secrets in this book. It says about Rabbi Natan of Breslov, that when Rabbi Nachman told Rabbi Natan to transcribe this book one day, Rabbi Natan entered the room of Rabbi Nachman, and it says that hours later, after he came out, after all the students began asking him what happened, Rabbi Natan's only response is as if it felt as if you were literally leaving the cave of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. He said it felt it's as if I was in the Idra Rabbah. The last day where Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, also the Idra Zuta where Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai passed away on that day and revealed all the secrets of the Torah, Rabbi Natan said that was the same feeling that he had. And that was with regard to the burnt book, which was many degrees lower than the level of the hidden book. Now, I want to tell us something about the hidden book, which is written in Chayei Moharan. We're going to see here this amazing thing. Od haya lo sefer echad. Rabbi Nachman had another book, shehu gavoa od yoter v'yoter afilu ma'asechel hanischaf, which was even greater and greater than the book called the burnt book. Rabbi Nachman commanded his student, Rabbi Shimon, to burn the burnt book once he was informed that because of the burnt book, it would be either his life or this book's existence. So Rabbi Nachman was willing to give up his life for the book. But he had a dilemma. He said, maybe it's better that I stay in this world to reveal more teaching, to bring more people close to Hashem, or I leave this world and I bring this book into light and reveal this book. And when he asked Rabbi Shimon, his main attendant, what to do, Rabbi Shimon informed him and said, just for one more moment that you're here with us, it's worth to burn the book. So Rabbi Nachman sent Rabbi Shimon without any delay, without any hesitance, and he told him, go, rain or shine, sick or not, go right now and travel as quick as you can to Breslov to go burn the book. Rabbi Shimon got sick on the way, very sick, to the point where he felt he was about to die. And Rabbi Shimon knew that on the way, this was all the work of the Yetzer Hara. So he worked through the sickness, got better the second he arrived to Breslov, and burnt the book himself. There were 2 copies and he burnt the book, I believe. That was one book. That was a very lofty book, higher than all the books that we know today. But there's another book even higher than that one. And this is called Sefer Haganuz, the hidden book. So look what it says about this. The Amar, and he said, Rabbi Nachman said, Shafiru gufo sidek ksheketavo, that he literally shed his body while writing this book. Completely, his corporeality, all his materialism, all his physicality, he removed while writing it. And no eye has ever seen this book. And Rabbi Nachman said about this book, this book is the secrets of all secrets. Meaning, with regard to him, it's the secret of all secrets. In vis-a-vis the books that he revealed. Because as it says, as you look through the writings, Rabbi Natan saying that all the books that Rabbi Nachman revealed were his revelations, were basically his nigle. Meaning the books that Rabbi Nachman gave to us, Likutei Moharan, all the other books that we have, Sibur Masiot, etc., were things that were revealed to him on a very surface level. But there's Rabbi Nachman's secrets, meaning that there's a book which is his secret, which is Sefer Anisra. And then there's the book which is his secrets of secrets, which is Sefer Haganuz. Meaning what we have today, of all the books that we know of, Likutei Moharan, Sefer Amido, etc., these are secrets of secrets to us in comparison. But for Rabbi Nachman, that's revealed. And here Rabbi Natan saying that this, in comparison to Rabbi Nachman, was the secrets of secrets. It was the highest book he ever wrote. The Amar, and Rabbi Nachman said, Shemashiach yagid al ze perush, that the Mashiach is going to give a commentary on this book. Sefer Haganuz, the hidden book. בספר הגנוז הזה כבר היה נגמר אצלו בתחילת שנת תקס"ו. Rabbi Nachman revealed this book in 5566. This was 5 years before he passed away. היינו 5 שנים קודם הסתלקותו, meaning 5 years before he left this world. ועתה עמוד, and now come and stand up, והתבונן and contemplate, לאיזה דרגה הגיע אחר כך, to the level which Rabbi Nachman reached after revealing this book. כי מעולם לא עמד על מדרגה אחת עד היום שנסתלק. Because Rabbi Nachman never stayed on the same level any single day until the day he passed away. Consecutive, you go day to day, Rabbi Nachman never stayed on the same level. Why? Because the main thing for him was moving from level to level. As we're going to see right here, that Rabbi Nachman said about himself, שאם היה יודע שעומד היום על מדרגה של אתמול, אינו צריך את עצמו כלל. that if he knew that he stayed on the same level the day previous, that he remained on the same level as yesterday, he would have no reason to exist at all. So we see here something unique, moving from level to level, that there's an infinite amount of levels that he had reached after this point of writing this book. And this was 5 years before his passing. So imagine if the Mashiach is going to write a perush on this book, a commentary on this book, meaning that the Mashiach is going to write ideas on this book, the level to the degree which Rabbi Nachman attained 5 years later. So look what he continues. And the truth is that literally any single moment he attained novelties according to his level that was awesome. And understand this very, very well. The greatness and the loftiness of this book, called the Hidden Book, no mind can comprehend this. And Mashiach himself will give a commentary on this. And now you can begin to understand and measure in your mind his greatness. This is not said or anything. This is written. It's katuv by Rabbi Natan himself, which means Rabbi Nachman said it about himself to show us the level in which he attained about this. Now, why am I telling us this, which seems to have no connection due to Sipur Amasio or to the stories? It's coming to tell us that what we think we know, we don't know. And that's the main idea here. It's actually part of the idea of the Viceroy. That the Viceroy's main test is to go about this journey without any knowledge at all. In fact, he leaves his servant behind, as we're going to see in the story, as we saw in the story. He leaves his servant and his horse behind. He leaves all his money behind, and he goes on this quest to find the lost princess. We're going to see who he encounters, these three giants today, who he encounters, because we're going to understand that the idea is not knowing. It's the entire purpose is not to know. It's to engage with complete emunah. And we're going to see this loftiness of the story, because we have tremendous advice within here. That was just something nice to reveal. I thought would be appropriate to explain and to help us measure in our minds, to help us contemplate the level of what we're talking about here. Because surface level, we can't understand this at all. And even if you want to bring the simple advice, which is the main thing, that is the main idea, take simple advice and apply. Behemet, the truth is, you want to really delve into it, it's infinite. This book is beyond our comprehension. It's the things in which Rabbi Natan says in the second letter of his letters to his son. He writes that it wouldn't be fitting to speak of secrets in which the Ancient of Days covered over. As brought down in the Gemara, that Shekisa Atik Yomin, that Atik Yomin, which is a reference to God's highest facet, the highest comprehension that we have of Hashem, which is what we call Atik Yomin, the Ancient of Days. It's the symbolism of God wrapping himself in a white talit and revealing the 13 traits of mercy. That is what we're talking about here. And these are the secrets in which God concealed completely from all the hidden eyes, from all the eyes of the world. So this is what we're talking about here, these secrets. So we summarize the story. We talked about the story of the king who had 6 sons and 1 daughter, and the daughter was the most precious, etc., etc. The king ended up getting angry at the daughter. The daughter left the castle and ends up finding herself in the castle of the not good one, the no good one. So the viceroy ends up, on his own volition, taking upon himself to go on this quest to search for the princess. And he goes to the king and says, give me money, horse and a servant, and I'll go on this quest to find the princess. And he goes on this journey for years, going through the forests and the deserts to try to find where the princess is. Until one point he sees a pathway to the side, and he ends up taking that pathway, and he goes through that pathway for quite some time until he sees a big castle. And surrounding this castle, all these soldiers, all these people, presenting this castle to be something, a lofty that no one can enter. It's an impenetrable force. But what does the viceroy say? Let's give it a shot. He walks through the soldiers, and the soldiers don't even ask him anything, like a complete illusion. And he walks through chamber to chamber in the castle, trying to find the princess, until he sees a big room, and he sees a king and all these musicians and this huge feast. And what happens? He sits in the corner, takes some food, and lies down, waiting to see what's going to happen. And as he sees the king happy and dancing and feasting, the king summons the queen into the room. And as the queen walks in, he recognizes who? The lost princess. So He's staring from afar, and the princess recognizes him as well. So the princess gets up first and goes, taps him on the shoulder and says, I recognize you. And he says, yes, I'm the viceroy and you're the lost princess. And now the viceroy begins to ask the princess, how do I get you out? So what does the viceroy say? What does the princess say, sorry? Go choose for yourself a place, and for a year, go seclude yourself and just long for me. I want you to yearn to bring me out. And on the last day, you're going to fast for the 24-hour period. You're not going to sleep. And on that final day, once you do this task, that you long for me for this entire year period, and on the last day you won't eat nor drink, no sleep, then you'll be able to bring me out. And as the man does this, as the viceroy does this, on the last day, he engages in this test and he starts to fast, and immediately he breaks the fast. Why? Because he sees a beautiful tree of an apple, a beautiful apple tree, and he rips off an apple and he eats from the apple and immediately falls asleep for a few years. And what happens? As he wakes up, he gets very angry. He goes back to the castle in which he found the princess initially. That same castle, the no good one. And he goes, asks the princess, how do I bring you out again? I fell. And she said, you're going to do the same thing again. For a year, go lock yourself away. Choose a place to seclude yourself and to long for me. But on the last day, now you don't need to fast anymore. You can eat. Just don't drink wine so that you don't fall asleep. Because the main thing is not to fall asleep. So the princess commands him this, and he does the same thing. And on the last day, as the evil inclination is greatest always on the last day, right as you're about to enter the gate of holiness, the evil inclination attacks this person, and the viceroy ends up seeing a spring that is completely red, that smells like wine, and yet he drinks from it. Why? Because he's sophisticated, and he thinks that there's no way a spring can actually be wine. But yet, he drinks from the wine and he falls. And he falls into a sleep of 7 years. And the servant tries to wake him up. And what happens? The viceroy can't wake up. So, the princess sees that she's not being freed, and she goes out of the castle. And this is 70 years later, or during this 70-year period, as this viceroy is sleeping, the princess leaves her castle with all the armies, and all these soldiers, and all her carriages, and the servant sees these armies and these carriages, and he hides. But what happens? The princess gets out of her carriage, jumps out of her carriage, and she goes to this viceroy who's sleeping, and she tries to wake him, and he does not wake up. So what does she do? She takes off her kerchief and starts writing with her tears the way to bring her out, the method in which to bring her out, where she's right now, and how to bring her out. And as the viceroy wakes up, and he sees that there's no one around him except for a servant, he asks his servant, where am I in the world? And what does the servant tell him? Everything that happened. That the queen came, the princess came, and wrote on her kerchief this entire thing. And as the viceroy lifts this kerchief up to the sun, he sees this code written. And what's the code? That now the princess is no longer found in her old castle. She's now found on a mountain of gold and a castle of pearls. So the viceroy looks at this and says, then I must go find her. And he leaves the servant behind. He leaves all his money, all his horses, everything behind, all that he had amassed from the king, and he goes on this quest alone to find the princess. And why I'm saying alone specifically is because we're going to study a beautiful lesson that Rabbi Nachman teaches us about being alone, what it means to be alone. So he was unique in the world, he was one. And now we're at the point in which he goes on this quest. So right here, it says in the story, "Achach kach ra'a adam gadol meod." So what happens? He goes in the desert and he starts trying to find the princess. And as he's searching for many, many years through the desert, he comes across a huge man. Adam gadol meod, she'eno geder enoshi klal. He was not in the category of a man at all. He was a giant. She'yeh adam gadol kol kach, that he was such a big man that he wasn't even human. V'nasa ilan gadol, this huge man was carrying a big tree. That in the settlements and the cities that this viceroy had seen, he'd never seen a tree this big. And the giant asked this viceroy, Miata, who are you? And the viceroy responds, Ani Adam, I'm a man. So the giant is shocked and he responds, and that's the key. What does the giant respond? I've been in the desert for so long, And I've never seen a man here before in my entire life. I've never seen a human. And then the viceroy told him the entire story of what happened. That he's searching out for a mountain of gold and a castle of pearls. So what does the giant respond back to him? It is certain that this is not in existence at all. Don't even get your hopes up. This doesn't exist. He pushed him away and discouraged him. And he told the viceroy, you put your mind to something completely foolish. It's certain that this does not exist at all. It's not found, this thing. Never heard of such a thing. The viceroy begins to cry very much. He begins to weep. Because it is certain that it must be found somewhere. But what happened? As the viceroy is arguing with this giant, the giant discourages him again and says what? That all the people who told you this existed are foolish and you're listening to foolish tales. And what did the viceroy respond? It is certain that it exists. They go on this shakla v'etalya, they go back and forth on this argument of whether it exists or not. Amarlo, so what happens? This huge and strange man responds to the viceroy of the king and tells him what? Lidati ishtut. According to what I think, it's complete foolishness. You're weird. But because of the fact that you're so stubborn, behold, I am in charge of all the wild animals in this world. In charge of all the animals. I'm going to do something on your behalf, and I'm going to summon all the animals. Because they run over all the world. Perhaps they will know of this castle. He summoned all the animals, from smallest to biggest. He summoned all the animals and he asked them all. And they all responded that they'd never seen something like this. So the giant tells the viceroy, see this. You see, people have told you foolish tales. Listen closely. Go back. Return from where you came. Because it's certain that this does not exist. Because it's not in the world at all. But he was stubborn. He pushed. The viceroy pushed and said, it is certain and it's obligated that it exists. It has to be. So the giant says, in the desert, my brother is roaming. My brother's roaming the desert, and he's in charge of all the birds. Perhaps he knows more of this castle, and perhaps the birds know more because they're flying in the air. Perhaps they can have a vision that they can see this castle. Perhaps they saw this mountain and this castle. And the giant tells the viceroy, go to him and tell him that I sent you. And now the viceroy goes for many, many years to search him out, to search for the brother. And he begins to find a huge man, similar to the likes of the first giant. He was also carrying a massive tree. He also asked him the same thing that he asked the first giant. He told him the entire story, that his brother had sent him, etc. And what happened? The giant discourages the viceroy and tells him, what are you doing? It does not exist. But he pressed his convictions, the viceroy, and he pushed, and he was stubborn. And he told the giant, so because he was stubborn, the giant responds back to the viceroy and says what? Behold, I'm in charge of all the birds. I'll summon all of them. Perhaps they will know. He summoned all the birds. He asked them, where is this castle? And they all responded as if they knew nothing. They had no idea. So the giant responds to the viceroy and tells the viceroy, don't you see that it's certain this does not exist? You came to my brother, now you come to me. It's certain it doesn't exist. Listen to me, return home. It does not exist. But what the viceroy was stubborn, and he said, it is certain that it exists. So, אמר לו לעלם במדבר נמצא שם אחי שמונה על כל הרוחות, והם רצים כל העולם. אולי יודעים הם. So the giant says, I see that you're stubborn. I see that you're not pushing. You're not budging. So, I'll send you to the third and final brother, the biggest of all of us. And he's in charge of all the winds. And he perhaps knows, he can summon all the winds and he can tell all the winds. Perhaps they've seen this castle on this mountain. Perhaps they know where this castle of gold, this castle of pearls and this mountain of gold is. And this is the end of the piece. He went for many years again to search for the princess and to search for this giant. He found another big man. He had a big tree carrying him, and he did the entire same story, the same process. He asked him, maybe he's seen this castle. And this viceroy told the giant the entire story. And the giant pushes him away, but the viceroy is standing strong. So this giant tells the viceroy, for the viceroy's sake, he's going to summon all the spirits, all the winds, and he's going to ask them. And he did so. And all the winds came. And he asked all of them. And not one of the winds knew where this castle was. Don't you see, the giant tells the viceroy, don't you see that they are telling you foolish things? The viceroy begins to cry and he says, I know for certain that it exists. While they're speaking, he sees that a final spirit comes, another ruach comes. And the giant who's in charge of the wind gets upset at this final wind that comes late. Why did you delay in coming? Didn't I decree that all the winds should come? Why didn't you come with all the other winds? The wind responds. I was delayed because what? I needed to carry the princess to a mountain of gold and a castle of pearls. And the viceroy became very happy. And he asked the giant who was in charge of all the winds, that the giant asks all the winds, or this specific wind that took the princess, what is precious over there in that place which you took her? What is valuable? And the wind responds, all the things that are present in that place are extremely valuable. Now the giant, who was once discouraging the viceroy, the giant tells the viceroy, what did he say? Because it's been such a long time that you've been seeking her out, and how much you've toiled to find her. Now perhaps you'll be prevented from finding her because of money. Therefore I'm giving you a certain vessel, a certain purse. That when the second you stick your hand into it, you're going to receive money, whatever money you desire. Now this giant commands this ruach, this final wind which carried the princess, to bring the viceroy to the same place, to guide him to that place. And look at the words that Rabbi Nachman uses. This is key. The storm wind came and carried him over there. Because which was the wind that carried the princess? Not just any wind. Ruach se'ara, the storm wind. There's a beautiful Torah in Likutei Moharan, and it's actually in the prophecy of Yechezkel, that when Yechezkel is about to ascend the chariot and he sees his vision of the chariot, he sees three different klipot, three different evil forces before he goes through this prophetic vision. And one of the forces he comes across, this flashing fire, this wind, this storm wind, this cloud, this mist, is this, what we're talking about, this ruach se'ara. And that ruach se'ara is what we call klipat noga. It's what we call the husk which separates evil and impure and holiness. It's what we call klipat noga. It's called glow. Noga means to glow, to shine. But this is a klipa, it's an evil realm, or it's a realm in general, that is half evil, half pure. That depending on your actions, you're able to turn this realm into purity or impurity, depending on what you do. So this is why it's very important on Shabbat Kodesh, on Shabbat, the evil forces and the evil realms and the places of impurities want to grab onto that level, which is called Klipat Noga, because it's separating holiness and impurity. So there's 3 levels of impurity, there's 3 levels of holiness, and in between, there's this Klipat Noga, which is half-half. So, Erev Shabbat, Friday, significantly, all the evil forces want to grab onto that place. Why? So that they can grab onto holiness, because if they take control of Klipat Noga, then they're able to have direct connection to the forces of holiness. But what happened on Shabbat? Shahevet Ka, a fire of Hashem descends down and protects this level from attaining any impurity. And this is why it's a very big sigura to take a hot shower before Shabbat. Rabbi Nachman says it's brought down in the Arizal. Why people go to the mikveh, etc., etc. And all this stuff to protect this place. Now that place what we're talking about is where all the work is done. Rabbi Nachman is telling you. There's something called Hechlot HaTmurot. It's called the Chamber of Exchanges. You know what the Chamber of Exchanges means? It's the chamber where the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination, puts all his work in. He exchanges evil and holiness, and he tries to convince you into thinking that there's no difference in between them. Meaning, the Yetzer Hara's main work is not wherever it's very clear to go right or left. It's exactly where it's unclear. When a person doesn't know what business decisions to make, or in which route to go in life. For example, a person's having problems in, for example, dating and getting married, or whatever it is, it could be anything. All the doubts in those places which is very unclear, where halacha doesn't determine where to go right or left, that's where the Yetzer Hara's main job is. It's called Hechlot HaTmurot, the chamber of exchanges. Why? Because the Yetzer Hara is constantly exchanging impurity and holiness together to make you think that this is this one and this is the other one. To make you unsure about what to do. That's the Ruach Se'ara. It's Klipat Noga. It's the storm wind in which enables a princess to find that castle. It enables the person, the viceroy, to find the princess. Because what Rabbi Nachman is telling you, as we've seen throughout all the lessons that we've done, especially in the last lesson we did with the lesson of Ayeh, that it's actually not through the ascents that you find the princess. It's not through the ascents that you find your soul. It's not through the ascents that you find yourself. It's not when everything is going good that you find who you are and you find God. And that you find Emunah. It's whenever you fall into that place where it's very doubtful, where there's all these sfekot, where there's all these doubts, where it's very difficult that you find Hashem there. Because that is the main test here. It's the Ruach Se'ara, it's the storm wind, which carries the viceroy to find the princess. As we saw in the lesson Ayeh. This amazing idea. So, Rabbi Nachman is telling you, Uva Ruach Se'ara v'nasa oto lesham. The storm wind came and carried the viceroy to that place. Because the only way the viceroy is going to find the princess is specifically when he's doubting. Specifically when it's difficult to find God. That's where he finds Hashem. That's where he finds the divine presence. That's how he unifies God and the divine presence together. That's how he brings the redemption. And how each and every person brings their own personal redemption. And gets out of the personal exile, because the only way to do that is through the difficulties and all the doubts, that you stay firm. Because whenever everything is going good, there's no doubts at all. So there's no test. The main thing is that within the test, you stay strong. That even if you fall, nonetheless, with all the falls that you endure and all the falls that you go into, Rabbi Nachman says, En shum yaosh ba'olam klal. There's no such thing as giving up. Rabbi Nachman teaches us that a man has to have azut likdusha, holy boldness. It's what we call holy arrogance. We think that arrogance is bad. Rabbi Nachman is telling you, arrogance on the side of holiness is necessary. He says a Jew cannot be a Jew without holiness, without holy boldness. He says just as much as we know that it says in the Gemara that anyone who has arrogance or azud the sitracha, evil boldness or haughtiness, it's known that his ancestors never stepped foot on Har Sinai, meaning that he has no place in the Jewish people. Just as much so, Rabbi Nachman says that anyone who doesn't have holy boldness has no place in the chelek of the Torah. He has no portion of the Torah. Because what is Rabbi Nachman saying? If you want to engage in all the wars of the Yetzer Hara, if you want to engage in all the wars that the Yetzer Hara is trying to make you fall into, trying to convince you that you're not worth anything, trying to convince you that you can't find God, trying to convince you that you can't do anything worthy in this world, you're just going to give up. If you fall into that trap, you'll never find the princess. Rabbi Nachman's telling you, when the Ruach Se'ara comes, when the storm wind comes, when Esav comes with all his tests, when the Yetzer Hara comes with all these doubts, with sicknesses, God forbid, with all the trauma that a person has to go through, all the suffering, and yet that person still stays strong, that is all that it's worth it. That's the main test. Because Rabbi Nachman is not saying for you to be a tzaddik within the test. But what makes a tzaddik a tzaddik? Sheva yipol tzaddik vekam. The tzaddik falls 7 times, but what makes him a tzaddik? That he gets up every single time. That's the story of the viceroy. I'm going to finish the story. That storm wind brings the viceroy to the gates of the city. And standing at the gates of the city were all these soldiers, preventing him from entering the city. He put his hand into the purse that this giant had given him, and he takes out money and he bribes these officers with it. And he enters the city. It was a beautiful city. He went to a wealthy person. He bought food from him. Because he would need to wait there. Because he would need to put great intelligence and wisdom into how to bring the princess out. How the viceroy brings the princess out, Rabbi Nachman did not tell the story. But in the end he took her out. So that's the end of the story. We're not done with the story, clearly. Rabbi Nachman tells us this. Before Rabbi Nachman starts his second book of Likutei Moharan, Rabbi Nachman tells us an awesome lesson. He says like this. Echad haya Avraham. It says in Yechezkel chapter 33, Avraham was one. He was unique. He was one. She'Avraham avad Hashem rak al yedei she'haya echad. Avraham served Hashem only with the concept that he was one. She'chashav bedato shehu rak yechidi ba'olam, that he thought in his mind that he was the only one in the world. Ve'lo yistakel klal al bnei olam. He did not look at anyone else in the world, at any of the other inhabitants of the world. He did not pay attention at all. Shesarim me'acharei Hashem mon'im, that are trying to remove him from serving Hashem, that are trying to prevent him from finding God. Avraham did not pay attention to those people. Ve'lo al aviv u'shar hamonim. He did not pay attention to his father, and nor of all the other people who were obstructing him from this holy task. Avraham acted as if he was the only one in the world. And this is why it says in Yechezkel, Echad haya Avraham. Avraham was one. The same is true of anyone who wants to enter the service of God. The true service we're talking about here. Not something which is fake. It's impossible for him to even enter the gates of holiness, to enter this task, to want to serve Hashem, except by means of this way, of what we just said, through this aspect. To act as if literally no one else exists in the world, as if you're the only one. And not to pay attention about any person who's obstructing him. And look at Rabbi Nachman says person here, not Yetzer Hara. Because we see here that greater than the test of the Yetzer Hara, as we see in the story, he falls into a sleep of 70 years, right? That's the test of the Yetzer Hara, meaning his own sophistications, his own logic. But we see after there's 3 giants, which were 3 huge men. Because Rabbi Nachman tells us that greater than the Yetzer Hara and obstructing people from holiness is human beings themselves. This is a big chidush. I studied this lesson today. It's an amazing lesson that Rabbi Nachman tells us that when Hashem's midat hadin, Hashem's trait of judgment comes to prevent a person from attaining something holy, because that is the way of God's work, that God can't let you attain everything in once. He has to put obstructions and obstacles in your way so that you have to break through them. And when that midat hadin, that trait of judgment comes and stands before you in preventing you from attaining that which you want to, for example, you want to do Bodhudut and you can't do it because Hashem's midat hadin is making you fall asleep every time you go to pray to God. What's he saying? It can only go so far. It can't finish off the person though. It can't discourage him completely to the point where the person has no hope. Because yet Hashem's Yetzer Hara, the Yetzer Hara is an angel itself which God created. The Yetzer Hara can't go past the boundaries to which God decreed to him. Yetzer Hara has a task, and he can only do that task. He can't go past that task. Because he can't take away a person's free will. But a human being, Rabbi Nachman says, has free will, and that's the danger in that if a person has free will, he can go past the boundary of the Yetzer Hara and prevent a person from holiness even more than the Yetzer Hara can. So what does the Yetzer Hara do sometimes? When he sees a person preventing someone else from attaining something holy, for example, he sees a person studying Sipur Masyot, and the other person says, no, why are you studying this? Study something else. And he discourages him completely. The Yetzer Hara will remove himself from the equation and let this person take the task of what he was supposed to do. Why? Because the Yetzer Hara can only go so far. And he can't finish off this other person. Whereas another person who's trying to distract someone else from holiness can completely finish off this man. Why? Because his free will can go past the boundaries through which God only limited to the Yetzer Hara. This man can surpass that. This is what we see with Pinchas. The beauty of Pinchas, Rabbi Nachman tells us. That it says, She'eshit Pinchas et chamati. That it says in the verse that Hashem says that God says that Pinchas turned away my anger. Ve'lo chiliti et bnei Israel. Did not finish off bnei Israel. Meaning what? That my midat hadin could not finish off bnei Israel. Right? Because the midat hadin can't finish off bnei Israel. It can only do so much. But whenever the Yetzer Hara saw that Pinchas was about to do vengeance to Am Yisrael, when he saw the act of Zimri and Cosby, Pinchas went up and took the sword. The Yetzer Hara thought he was about to cause havoc upon all of Am Yisrael. But what happened? Pinchas encloses that vengeance of God and makes it seem to the Yetzer Hara as if he's about to destroy everyone. And what did he do? He kills only the perpetrators. Because what was Pinchas' understanding of? That if he were to take the task upon himself, the Yetzer Hara would leave, which means Midat Adin is done. So now it's up to him. But now that it's up to him, what's he going to do? Only kill those responsible. And actually trick the Yetzer Hara into thinking that he was going to do lots of damage when Be'emet, he actually was tremendously merciful. That's what Rabbi Nachman is saying. Why does it say Adam Gadol in the story? A huge man stood in the desert and he comes through three huge men, three giants. Because what's the idea here? That the man himself can actually prevent a person from attaining holiness more than the Yetzer Hara can. Sometimes people will discourage you from holiness more than the evil inclination will. So we have to be careful, especially when we cool people off. Because that's what Amalek is. Amalek is gematria safek, it's doubt, it's coolness. Asher kara baderech. Karecha baderech, that karecha comes the word krirut, coolness. The Amalek tries to cool you off. That's what we're talking about here. So Rabbi Nachman is telling you, don't pay attention to those people that are obstructing you on your way. Because people themselves will be stronger than the Yetzer Hara. But what did he say? Only a person who wants to enter Avodat Hashem has to engage with the same mentality that Avraham Avinu engaged with, which is what? I'm the only one that exists. Don't look at anyone who's preventing you. Whether it's your father, your mother, your father-in-law, your wife, your children, no one. Anyone who's preventing you from attaining truth and holiness, don't listen. Or all the other obstacles that exist with all the other people in the world. That are constantly mocking you and trying to prevent you and distract you from serving Hashem. Do not pay attention to them at all. Engage and live by this mentality. One was Avraham. Because you have to be as if you're the only one in the world. And why is this so important? Look at the words. What did the first giant tell the viceroy? I've never seen a man walking in the desert before. Because if a person wants to find the truth, you're one. You have to get rid of all your servants. You have to get rid of all the money. You have to get rid of all the horses. And you engage on this quest alone. It's a very lonely journey. It's what we call people to do. Go choose for yourself a place and long for me. Because the entire journey is with the mentality of, I'm the only one in the world. No one is here. No one is here discouraging me. I'm the only one. Even if you're trying to tell me that she doesn't exist, I believe she exists. That's the entire test. The test is not what happens along the road, meaning of whether you fall or you ascend or you completely keep your eyes pure, etc., with all the other examples that exist with regard to this. Because Rabbi Nachman is saying, Kol ha'olam kulo gesher tzar me'od. The entire world's a very, very narrow bridge. Va'ikar ve'aklal shelo yitpachet klal. The essential idea and the main idea is what? Do not be afraid. Because what is Rabbi Nachman telling you? The bridge is narrow. You're going to fall. No one falls. No one stays straight on a very narrow bridge. No one stays on the bridge when it's very narrow. You're going to fall. But Rabbi Nachman is saying, do not be afraid to fall. Do not be afraid, because the main thing that discourages people from ever getting back up is because once they fall and they believe they have nothing left of them. They believe they have no hope. Rabbi Nachman is telling you, falls are a necessary part of the journey. In fact, you cannot ascend without falling. But when you fall, what's the mentality you have? Echad haya Avraham. One was Avraham. Meaning, I'm going to enter the desert now. I'm going to find the princess. Even if the giants who are much bigger than me, the giants can be Rabbanim sometimes. Sometimes a person can be trying to find holiness, and sometimes another person with peyot and a beard, can come to this man and tell him, what you're doing is not good. But you believe be'emet in your heart that the hidbodedut that you're doing is good. This happens constantly. We've seen this in history many, many times. Many, many times. Korach was a big tzaddik, and he distracted many, many people. The same is true of many generations. And giants can be whatever is in your eyes a giant. It doesn't matter. In your eyes, you're role models. You're people who are very big in your eyes. It doesn't matter what the example is. The main thing is that they're giants. And in your eyes, you feel as if you're helpless in front of them. But what Rabbi Nachman is saying is, don't believe them when they're telling you that she doesn't exist. Continue fighting, no matter what it takes. Even if the giant is telling you, even if the biggest person in the world is telling you she doesn't exist, don't believe him. He can bring you all the logic in the world, all the sophistications, all the wisdoms in the world to prove to you why she doesn't exist. Rabbi Nachman is saying, stick with your gut. Go. Do it, bodedut. Continue secluding yourself, searching for the princess. Be honest with yourself. Rabbi Nachman says in Sefer Hamidot an amazing thing. In the section of Emet, the 31st line. Rabbi Nachman tells us that one who wants to be sur mera, one who wants to remove himself from all evil, who wants to be truly pure, and he sees that there's no truth in the world, he sees that truth is lacking in the world, that truth doesn't exist, you know what he has to do? Act like a shote, act like a fool. You know what the giants tell him? It is certain that what you're saying is divrei shtut, that what people have told you are foolish words. They're telling this man that he's a fool. But in order to find the truth, you have to be a fool in the eyes of the world. There's a beautiful story called the tainted grain. It's a very small story. Rabbi Nachman told this story. It's a very beautiful parable that tells us about this idea of engaging with the world, specifically when the world is crazy. I think I might have told this story before, I'm not sure. But one day, I think I told this story maybe last class, but nonetheless, good chazara. One day, a king and his servant were walking in the cemetery, or two people were walking in the cemetery, and they heard some spirits speaking about the crop of the year, what would happen that year. And they heard that these neshamot, these deceased people already, were speaking that the crop that year would have a poisonous crop, that anyone who would eat the crop would go crazy. So they said, what should we do now? We know this information. Should we tell the entire world? Should we not? If we don't eat from the crop, then we won't survive, etc. So they decided not to tell anyone. But you know what they came to the conclusion of? They said, we won't tell anyone of what exists. We won't tell anyone that if you eat the crop, you become crazy. Only we know. But what do we do now? Do we eat from the crop or not? Because if we don't eat from the crop, then if the entire world is crazy, then the majority is normal. Because in their eyes, they don't think they're crazy. Everyone else is acting the same. So we're crazy. But if we eat from the crop, then what happens? We become crazy like them. So what did Rabbi Nachman say? These two people decided that what? They would eat from the crop, except they would put a mark on their foreheads. That they knew they were crazy. Because Rabbi Nachman is telling you something like this. You can't enter the world and be normal. You can't. If you want to find the truth, you can't be normal. You have to be yachid in the world. Avraham Avinu was 3 years old when he decided to search for God. You know when he found Hashem? 48 years old, it said in the Midrash. 45 years he was searching. You know what 45 is? Gematria Adam, man. That's what made Avraham Avinu a man. The search for 45 years. Till he found Hashem at 48. And then 75 Hashem reveals himself to him. Lech lecha go. It's brought down in the Midrash. 45 years Avraham Avinu is searching since the age of 3 for God until he finds Hashem. That's what Rabbi Nachman is saying. You have to be crazy. You have to go against the entire world if you want to find God. Now, yes, there's the Torah, etc., etc. But the Torah is for each and every individual according to where he is. This is why the road in which the Viceroy takes is different from any single person, because the giants have never seen a person like this before. Because each and every journey a person takes is unique. It's never the same journey. Never, ever. And that's what Rabbi Nachman is telling you as a tzaddik. He's telling you You will go on the journey, but you're going to have emunah, that you're going to go on it alone, because only you know in your heart what you need to do. But the condition is that you have to be honest, and you have to be literally completely unwaverable in your faith. You have to have unwavering faith in this. And so what's the idea of putting the mark on your forehead while still eating the crop is that, yes, you're going to be crazy, but at least you'll know you're crazy. Because the main idea is to enter this world, to be crazy like the rest of the world. But what? To know at least that you're crazy. Because the world doesn't think. They don't have consciousness. The world will be crazy, but they won't recognize they're crazy. Rabbi Nachman's telling you, be crazy like the rest of the world. You're going to fall, and you're going to go through ascent and descent, and you're going to go through hell in this world, through suffering. But what? At least know where you are. That's what the Viceroy comes to. Where am I in the world? That's the Viceroy's entire quest. Where am I in the world? Meaning that he's always questioning himself. He's always conscious of the fact that he has no idea where he is, that he's crazy, that he has no place, that he's running from here to there, that he keeps falling and ascending, that he has no idea where to find the princess. But at least he's conscious of it. And that's the main test that Rabbi Nachman's telling us. No matter how many falls, no matter how many descents, etc., etc., be unwavering in your faith. And this was something that I thought was beautiful. Hopefully I can share this last idea if we have time. In Torah Kuf Pehe, in 185, this lesson, an amazing idea about obstacles. What we see here with regard to the story of this viceroy. Ve'amar Rabbeinu Zal, Rabbi Nachman said, anyone who has greater obstacles and troubles, toiling with regard to finding Hashem at the beginning of his service, when he begins to start coming close to Hashem and he has very big difficulties, meaning when a person begins to serve Hashem, he has tremendous obstacles, whether it's his father, his wife, his father-in-law, other people that are preventing him and constantly obstructing his pathway to holiness, whether it's obstacles of money, all the obstacles, the obstructions, the confusions that a person goes through, that are constantly spreading themselves before this person, preventing him from attaining that which he wants to. Specifically, when a person begins, that's what happens. But Rabbi Nachman is saying a person needs to put tremendous effort and to toil to break them. All the effort a person places at the beginning of trying to find Hashem, trying to serve Hashem, are extremely beneficial to him. The more effort you put, the greater the benefit. Because what is Rabbi Nachman saying? Through the effort and the amount of toil that you put, commensurate with that, you're going to attain as much holiness later on. Meaning what? All the efforts that you put at the beginning of finding Hashem create a vessel. And the greater your vessel, meaning the more effort you put in at the beginning, the greater the vessel, and the greater the vessel, the more holiness you can contain. Rabbi Nachman saying, the greater the efforts, whenever you begin to serve Hashem, don't be discouraged by this. Look a little bit later on, hold on tight, and Rabbi Nachman saying, reinforce yourself, because continue putting in the work now, later you're going to receive a vessel this big, to receive all the holiness. And that's exactly what we're talking about here. The greatest salvation that exists comes through the greatest obstacles, the greatest giants. From giant to giant to giant, through years and years of searching, he can't find any princess. But what? He has unwavering faith, emunah, that is strong to the point, without any logic. Without any logic. He took away his sophistication, he took away his wisdom, and he wasn't a chacham at all. He decided to engage with faith, because Rabbi Nachman is saying the only way to find the princess is emunah. Rabbi Nachman said a phrase at the end, this is what we'll end. Rabbi Nachman said something, he says, I've parched my throat completely about speaking about faith. So much to the point where in the final generations, no one's going to be speaking about emunah. He's saying, but one who holds on to emunah in the final generations, kadosh yamer lo, he will be called and sanctified holy. Kol hanotar b'tzion v'Yerushalayim, v'hanotar b'tzion Kadosh Yamer Lo. Anyone who remains in Yerushalayim and Tzion, what's Yerushalayim? Yir'ah Shalem, complete fear. What's Tzion? It's Emunah. Rabbi Nachman is telling you that when you remain in Emunah, when it's very difficult, Kadosh Yamer Lo, you're going to be called holy. That's who the Mashiach is going to put the crown on. Rabbi Nachman said at the end of times, the simple people who read Tehillim and who engage with simple faith are going to bring the Mashiach, are going to put the crown on the Mashiach's head. It's that simple. We don't need great avodot. We don't need any more mortifications. We don't need tzil gufim. We don't need to go to cold mikvahs and to roll in the snow anymore. That stuff is done. Rabbi Nachman is saying the fasting is done. As we see with the story of the lost princess. What's he saying? The effort. Just put in the toiling effort. Do the long for the princess. Continue searching. Want. Because Rabbi Nachman is saying the main avodah is ratzon. It's willpower. It's to want to find the princess. If a person's willpower is super strong, nothing's in his way. Rabbi Nachman is saying it's all a matter of how much willpower you have. You want to attain something? Reinforce your willpower. Reinforce your ratzon. Reinforce your desire for that thing. And all the obstacles that are in your way enable you to do that. So look at it as a way to actually get closer to Hashem. And that's the mentality, God willing. As we continue with this story, hopefully discovering a little bit peace and Avodat Hashem. And going from story to story, we're going to see all this advice of Avodat Hashem. And why Rabbi Nachman starts with this is very, very simple on the surface level. Because it's the key to any single person's life. If a person wants to find Hashem, if a person wants to do anything holy in this world, if a person wants to attain anything of what he's meant to be, it's all about the effort. As Rabbi Zusha said on his deathbed, whenever they saw his students crying, his students saw him crying, Rabbi Zusha B'Anipoli, they asked him, why are you crying? Rabbi Zusha responded, he said, I'm not afraid that up there they're going to say, why weren't you like Moshe Rabbeinu? Because Moshe Rabbeinu is Moshe Rabbeinu. But I'm afraid that they're going to ask, why weren't you more like Zusha? So, God willing, B'ezrat Hashem, maybe be more like ourselves, and it's only through the effort that we do that. So, B'ezrat Hashem, with Hashem's help, we'll go through there and overcome all the obstacles. Amen.